Jaydev, thank you for taking the time to talk to me and the people from Waterloo that are going to be watching this. I thought I would start just by asking you to tell me about your job at OPG and how your career led you to this position.
First of all, thank you for having me, Peter. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to the engineers in the making. As we know, we are refurbishing Darlington nuclear reactors to extend life of its operation for next 30 years. During this refurbishment, we use automated machines, some manually operated machines, and some tools, which replaces the reactor components. For huge projects like these, there is a critical path. And if we find ways to improve this critical path, then we can save days on the project and we can bring that reactor back online and start to produce electricity ahead of schedule. Now, our group here, which is known as Refurbishment Innovations, which looks after these critical path improvements. And I am section manager for this group currently. Since we are closest to the new technology, secondary goal of our group is to help provide latest technology implementation support, such as Internet of Things, digitization, 4D schedule, material tracking, etc. Now, some of these technologies are so good that they are being used company-wide. And for the part of how I came across this opportunity in my career is a long story, but short version is when I was doing electrical engineering, we used to do projects, and like any other students, we design something, we buy parts, and then we build it. Hence, we came across a term called EPC, which is known as Engineering, Procure, and Construct. So I wanted to get my head wrapped around how does the world do EPC at a large scale? Because everything around us has an element of EPC, right? So now, when we are students and doing a project, we go through many difficult situations, right? And as we know, the world is doing EPC at a bigger scale than just a small university project. So this curiosity led me to work at a design engineering firm after graduation, where I learned engineering and procurement for about 3 years, and then I got into construction firm and learned about construction and procurement for about another 3.5 years. And now, when I was doing that, what I realized that EPC has a big element of customer as well. So I decided to join OPG to learn customer, or you can say client side of things. And I'm very thankful that OPG recognized my efforts and gave me the opportunity.
Absolutely, and an interesting job that you have now and a path that you've taken to that. So, we're going to talk about the digitization of the power facilities, effectively the creation of digital twins of your power generating plants. Can you tell me about what this project did?
Honestly, in the beginning, during about mid 2018 timeframe, we were given a simple task to take a look at few black and white 3D laser scans we had of a couple of areas in Darlington Power Plant. And we had to figure out a way to make them available to employees. Now, when any task is given to our team, we look at it from a few different perspectives, right? Such as like, are we doing the right thing? Is this the latest sustainable and scalable technology? Um, are we creating an order of magnitude of improvement? And are we bringing significant value to the company? Um, Another thing that we look at is, do the end user really need this? And is it applicable to everyone in the company or just few people? And if all of the answers to these questions are yes, then we look at what is the most efficient way we can execute this, and how can we go beyond the expectation of the end users. So while we were looking at these black and white scans, the light bulb went off in our brain, and we thought, what if we had 3D representation of all of our power plants instead of just few areas in Arlington site, right? Um, so how would that benefit to OPG, right? Remind you that we have about 160 power plants located across the province of Ontario, and some of them are in United States of America. So if employees can access these 3D representation of power plants right from the computers, then we can bring efficiency. We can improve their life, right, at work and bring tremendous benefits to OPG. So we thought that our end goal should be to have all of these power facilities easily accessible via all employees so we can visit any power plant um, right from the computer. So that actually motivated us to implement this thing at a faster pace. During this project, we implemented a system that provides a secure, centralized storage, which is easily accessible by all employees. And employees are using software interface and website interface. We set up this infrastructure with help from our CIO. We also set up a center of excellence, or you can say a service provider team within OPG under our drawing office department, who go out in the field and collect virtual data and publish them on OPG server. Now, this data has vast amount of applications besides just virtual walkdown, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, 4D schedules, 3D point clouds, and 3D model overlay, interference checks. We can do remote measurements, drawing verifications with the field conditions, and many more. So we also provided a way to request for any of these additional services or applications, you can say, from Drawing Office. So in a nutshell, that is what we implemented in this project.
So, with the digital twins, that basically means that anyone within OPG is able to see in detail the inside of all of your power facilities. And that allows them to consider any changes that they might wish to make. Like, as I think you mentioned, they can see whether new pipes they might want to put in are going to bump into each other or bump into things which are already there. And they can understand, how processes operate. This is really quite a valuable thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So, what was the impact of the project? What were the benefits that OPG got from this?
Yeah, so currently there has been 19 months of runtime with this new system, where employees are accessing virtual data of our power plants using a software interface, and another option is website interface. So far, we have collected about 9 terabytes of data that contains some of our real estate buildings, some of our renewable generation power plants, and some nuclear power plants. And we are collecting more data daily. There are about 2,300 plus employees using the system in their day-to-day work life um, for different purposes. Now, one of the purpose is virtual walkdown, which gives us appreciation of true size, shape, and form of the equipment and where it is located in the power plant. This is saving us traveling time, as you can imagine, right? And radiation dose and the costs associated with them. Second purpose is training. As you know, many employees are retiring and new workforce is joining. So um, having the virtual data of power plants uh, accessible by new employees is building their knowledge about the power plants exponentially because they can visualize parts of the plant when they need to. Another application is taking remote measurements from this three-dimensional data. As you can imagine, this is saving us cost and schedule. Another and very important one, in my opinion, is collaborating with vendors and colleagues instantaneously. Now, various teams such as projects, design, procurement, construction, ops and maintenance, system engineering, and vendors. They can collaborate and reference the virtual plant and talk about where their project is located and how the project is going to get executed very easily, right? And within minutes. Um, this brings us, I think this brings us closer together and helps us plan and execute projects more cost effectively. I can go on and on as there are many other purposes and applications that our employees use this virtual data for, such as pre-job brief, post-job briefs, virtual work instructions, situational awareness, um, identification of storage and work areas before the work starts, etc. So as you can see, this brings us an order of magnitude improvement in our work life, and it helps us work efficiently and collaboratively. It has taken communication within the company to a new height um, and added a virtual perspective in everything we do. Further applications such as 40 schedules are also making huge difference in closing the gap of unknowns during the project execution. So it has truly changed how we work in short amount of time, and we're excited about further benefits that this technology will bring us in the future.
Yeah, when you showed it to me, you showed me that it had the capability of providing information on various elements inside the picture. So there may be a valve, for example, that would be in the online environment or the online picture of the power station, and people could go to that and get the dimensions and the characteristics of that valve. As well as that, there seemed to be information available on work that had been done there in the past, and which would, as you mentioned, mean that people could do all of this remotely rather than having to go and look at what was on the site.
Exactly.
Very interesting. So, how was the project managed? What approach did you take to that? And what did you learn from the project management?
Yeah, so the project was managed by our team back in 2018, 2019 timeframe, along with continuous support from our Chief Information Office, CIO, procedure and governance team, and of course, end users and affected stakeholders. Um, so right after the light bulb went off in our brain that one day we can have all of the power plants virtually accessible by using just any computer, and so we were super excited for the future and benefits it can bring. So we right away gathered the representatives of many end users across the company as a first step, and we did about 6 workshops together, um, and then we gathered their thought on what they would like to see in next 10 years if they had access to power plants virtually right from their computer. And in parallel to this, we invited about 12 different vendors to do the show and tell so we can evaluate what is readily available in the market. Now, while we were gathering these details, we realized that there are company-wide applications, and hence we started the enterprise strategy document where we listed things that we will do to transition OPG to have a better digital future. And then we started executing that strategy. With help from our CIO, we set up secured, centralized IT infrastructure, um, and with help from our drawing office, who are the owner of the as-built data, such as drawings, right? So we set up a small team within that team to start collecting 3D data and publish it onto the centralized server, so end users can access it easily. We modified some of our governance to remind users that 340 technology is available and the service provider is in-house, which they can leverage. While we were executing this project, we learned many things, such as the new technologies should be simple, easy to implement, easy to use, and has to be intuitive. The data has to be truly democratized and available to all employees at their fingertip. Truly listening and understanding problems of end users and having a passion to solve them is a key, and also having an attitude towards setting the end user for success brings huge benefits. We also learned that it is very important to put the company and its vision ahead of executing any innovation. This progresses the innovative idea further and helps in bringing an order of magnitude improvement to the company. In general, one thing that we learned during this project is that if we ever overwhelmed with many possible options and outcomes, then there is a way to overcome it. And what helped us was to um, we accept the worst case scenario or worst case outcome and assign that a probability score. And on the other hand, we think about good things that they can bring to us and assign them a probability. From both of these probabilities scores, we were able to see that probability of good things happening are far more certain. So that kept us going.
Okay, and what challenges did you face in the project? What things caused you to, uh, you know, uh, didn't go the way you expected them to go?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenge I would say was to wrap our head around how this technology will work. Um, Things such as how the front end will work, how the back end will work, where will we store the data, what server specifications we should use, how will we collect the data from the field, how we're going to process the data, who will take the roles and responsibility of doing different things, how we will train people, what format of data we will use, and how will it be available to employees to use. So thinking about these things ahead and getting a head start on them to learn how all the pieces of the puzzle will come together before implementing at scale helped us a lot. As soon as we got the device back in 2019 and software is implemented, on the same day we started collecting data to understand the workflow and how it will all work. Um, Second thing that we faced challenge with was making sure we select the right technology that works for our organization, and also that technology should allow importing of third-party data. The reason for that is basically we want to give our vendors freedom to use any other scan technology that they want to use. But at the same time, we should ensure that our system can import that data eh, and we can use it for our purpose so that the degree of freedom is there, right? So choosing appropriate technology for our purpose was a great challenge, and as I mentioned earlier, to overcome that, we did about 12 show and tell with different vendors and understood what they're offering. And we also did multiple meetings after that to um, understand how their technology works in deep. Um, so basically, just making sure that the technology works for your organization is very important.
Very much so. And you went through a very careful process of technology selection. Some organizations don't do that, and that can create problems for them. It's very important that you mentioned that. Okay, so how was the project introduced to the people who would use the new technology? What did you do to gain their support for its use?
Yeah, adoption was one of the main challenge we identified, and we started thinking about what are some of the things that we could do to expedite adoption across the company. Uh, like because if you think about it, everyone is really busy doing their work, and so how are they take time and learn this new user interface? And especially organization like ours, we have 10,000 employees in the company, so it is we need a plan to reach to the in this wide employee base. So we started looking at these big tech companies on how they are getting people to adapt their technology, right? We realized that they use early adopter approach, and then um, the early adopters become the advocate for the technology that you're trying to implement. So we thought about using the similar kind of approach and wanted to see if that works for us. So in our case, our early adopters were the employees who wanted to do things differently and are motivated. Employees who wanted to get involved in new things that company is doing, and they wanted to use that technology to do better than their colleagues. So, for example, in my opinion, one of the characteristic of employees who are motivated and want to get involved in what company is doing, they check intranet frequently. They stay up to date with the company's news. Um, they get involved in the events. So we wanted to target these individuals. So we did a homepage article about this new technology. The second technique we used was all employee email. Um, so the link were sent out in the email to the article that this new technology is available to you if you want to use it. And the third technique we use was to update the governance. So employees who are dedicated and follow the procedures to do their work, they can start to adopt this new technology. And for the fourth technique, we use to do lunch and learn sessions where we did not see adoption. Um, so as we went through these four techniques, we saw that the motivated people were actually teaching other employees about this tech. So that helped us a lot.
So, Jaydev, were there new working practices that the technology required? And if so, how were these developed and introduced?
Yeah, as we can expect, there are numerous procedures and guidelines to standardize the work we do. Um, we had to find governance that is suited for this technology. And it has to get used frequently, and it should involve many stakeholders. Uh, so from our previous work experiences, we were able to identify few governing documents that fall into this criteria, which have involvement from many stakeholders. Um, so one of the governing document, for example, was a modification guide to our station's system structure and components. We updated this guide to include reminders at each stage of the modification cycle for users to utilize the 3D, 4D technologies. Now, this update was aimed for the end users. So let's go into a guide that we created for the Center of Excellence, which provides the data collection services. So as soon as we got our hands on the new equipment and software, we started experimenting and figured out how we will make this new technology work. So then it was time to put it on a paper. So if any employee goes on a rotation job or they switch jobs, the knowledge can be obtained from this guide. Now, this guide covers what questions to ask the end user, how to plan the job, how many scans to take, where the data gets stored, how to process and publish the data, where would the backup and archive files be saved, um, which access rights to be granted, and many more. So, in addition to this guide and modifications to our governance, um, as you know, um, picture speaks 1,000 words, and video even speaks like maybe million words. So So we also made video guides for end users and the Center of Excellence. So the learning curve is actually high.
Okay, and so what you say certainly makes sense that new technologies that you introduce, you want to very carefully determine what the working practices will be and document and record those so that they can be transferred from one person to another. And so you have a standard way of doing things to make sure it's always going to be done properly. How
Exactly.
did you decide what those processes would be? So, did the people who were working with that technology develop these operating practices themselves, or did you get that from the vendor? How did you decide what those would be?
Some aspect of this procedure was developed in-house by gaining some experience after using the tech for a couple of weeks. The vendor provides technology, but they do not necessarily know how our power plant is from inside. So, as a center of excellence who provides data collection services to the company, we made a procedure on our own by doing trial and error and figuring out what's the best possible way to execute the data collection work. For example, 10 by 10 room, we need minimum 4 scans. And if there are more equipment tags in the room, and so then we should cover all of them. So anyone visiting the virtual data, they can see the equipment tags. So basically, aspect of incorporating technology for our station system and structure, we made the procedure on our own. We did utilize vendor tech specs and their recommendations in our procedures, so we can see the number of points being collected at certain machine settings, and how we can take scans remotely using a tablet. So it was a combination of both, but majority was developed in-house.
Okay, very important for people who are learning how to do this, how to work with the introduction of technology, that your approach has been a combination of things that you learned from the vendor, but also things that you had to develop for yourself. Okay,
Correct.
so my next question is around security. So, power generation is very important for uh, the uh, the economy and people's welfare.
Mhm.
And so security is especially important. And without revealing anything that would be beneficial to people who might use it badly, how did
Mhm.
you incorporate the necessary emphasis on security into the project?
Yes, cybersecurity and maintaining any company's proprietary data is super important, um, and extremely valuable piece of puzzle. So I'll be able to tell you some details about it. So cybersecurity is important, but at the same time, democratizing the available data is also as equally important. Basically, we can have amazing data of our power plants, but if we keep it limited to number of employees, then the value is lost. The data has to be democratized. In other words, it must be available to every employee based on their role so that they can use it when they need it. But at the same time, it has to be secured. So we have our own IT infrastructure, which we were able to leverage during implementation of this system. In a nutshell, vendor recommended specs were followed for the IT infrastructure add-on, and then recommended software were deployed. There were also CAD software plugins that were deployed as well, which allowed us to load 3D scan data whenever there was a need. Hence, it was easy to combine the 3D models and Primavera schedules to make 4D schedules or do interference check and look for any work overlap in an area. Um, the reason why I'm saying this is because this way there were no individual files floating around the company. It was all saved in a central location, and employees are able to load data from the server when they need. And this eliminated the risk of losing data or carrying multiple copies of the data um, after its use. Uh, in addition to this, as we all know, multi-factor authentication is now a standard practice that is followed by most of the organization, and we also follow that. And basically, this summarizes what I can share with you on the security side of things.
Certainly for your organization, security was very important. And that because of that, you incorporated that from the beginning of the project in the way that you did things, and your overall design was incorporated a high degree of security. And I want to really just emphasize that for people watching, of course, security is important to Ontario power generation, but it's also important for most organizations, probably all organizations in what they do. Okay, my next question is how do you approach your own skills development, Jaydev? Do you ensure that you can conduct projects like this one and stay current in your field? What do you do to make sure your skills keep you able to do these things?
Yeah, I think that having a purpose plays a significant role in personal development. Many people can talk about what they do, how they do it, but not many can talk about why they do it. In this particular case, I lived through the difficulties of EPC, engineering, procure, and construct, in my previous life, which gave me purpose that I want to improve quality of employees' life at work and also supercharge new young employees' learning curve about the power plants. And I think I found an opportunity to serve this purpose and go beyond this purpose with the digitization of our power plants. This enabled us to collaborate efficiently, avoid similar hurdles that I had previously, and increase the productivity with added virtual references and daily activities that we do. So basically, working for something we love and care about is passion. And the right purpose gives us passion. It develops desire to learn. It also drives us to do better things, and it helps us achieve new heights. And I think the next important thing to have um, after purpose is vision. And vision is basically what is the end goal? What is that we really want to create in the world around us, right? And as you can imagine, we can have fun with this one. We are dreamers, and universe is our playground. You know what they say. If you see it here, then you can hold it here. So yeah, there are some good questions that I think are important about the vision, such as does the vision align with what the world needs or may need in the future? And does it significantly impact people's life in a good, positive way? And another good question to ask is with the vision that we have, are we going to help people? Right? And does it progress us as a human to become a better civilization and become better version of ourselves? So then, and after purpose and vision, I think it is important to have a strategy, and strategy is basically how we are going to bring the vision to life. Strategy is something where you leverage everything and everyone around you to build a plan and um, to build a plan with end date in mind. I think helping people all around you and asking for help from people when you need it are also important. When you ask for help, you will discover that people wanted to help you and they just did not know that you needed the help. I think if we have purpose, vision, and strategy, the rest will fall in place automatically, such as building skills, staying up to date with what's happening in the world, where the world is going, etc.
Thank you. And do you have any further advice for engineers who will be watching this? This is my last question, and I'm just keen to capture any final points that you might have.
Um, yeah, I think right now is the best time to be alive as an engineer. And I also thought the same thing back in 2011 when I was doing my bachelor's. So yeah, I think engineering is about creating things that never existed. So it is like magic made real with engineering, right? So I think engineers will thrive and create better future for humans as they have been doing in the past. One of the things that engineers should know is that great design of the product are critical, but manufacturing at large scale, having a supply chain in place, and maintaining to support the production are even more complex. As humans, I think our goal should be to try and produce clean energy products or services more than what we consume. And I think engineers are well suited for development of this. The world is giving priority to clean energy, and that alone is creating tremendous opportunity for engineers. In our case, the end product is electron. We produce them from hydro dams, solar farms, nuclear fission reactors, biomass, and natural gas. As we know, everyone uses electricity, and in future, the usage is going to grow at fast pace as we see more and more adoption of clean energy products such as electric vehicles. And in Ontario, we are not perfect, but we are doing better than some parts of the world, and we should be proud of that. And we are transitioning on how the electricity is produced, and nuclear is central part of this transition. You may already know this, but we recently announced development of new small modular reactors close to the Darlington nuclear turning station. This facility is going to add more clean energy on Ontario's grid in the future. Now, nuclear has been around for a long time, and we have an opportunity to reinvent it using small modular reactors. So the power can be provided to remote communities, and guess who can make this happen, right? Engineers. And we can either be consumer of it or we can contribute to the production of clean electricity. Clean energy is essential for progress of humankind, and it is better for keeping the environment clean for future generations. In addition to clean energy, there are other areas where engineering is also progressing at exponential rate, such as space exploration, to preserve the light of human consciousness and become spacefaring civilization. Um, Another example is genetic engineering. We are using genetic engineering to overcome diseases, right? And I think there are some efforts are being made on 3D transportation network to ease the traffic on the road. Um, Another good example is the brain devices that we are using to help people with spinal cord injuries, right? And the obvious one that we all know is the artificial intelligence and robots that are driving the next industrial revolution. So, as I said, the engineers have been and will thrive and survive in the future. But we should always remember the human side of things while we build any products and always serve the purpose to achieve better future for human lives. Other than that, I think they have nothing to worry about.
Thank you, Jaydev, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions. I think it will be very valuable for the people who are watching.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me. I'm happy to help and happy to be here. Thank you.